are back and ready to continue with day number 3 of the HCT Winter Championship. I'm Raven, and joining me is Sottle, and we have Roger versus LionKing. That was just a lot of names in a very short amount of time. But how are you feeling about this matchup, Sottle, as it is going to be the last decider match for the day?
It is. We're going to move very swiftly on after this to our actual World Championship deciders, qualifiers, top 8 matches, whatever you want to call them. But we have got something that makes me a little bit sad. Is a Quest Rogue ban on both sides. Because I personally, I might be in the minority here, but I love at least casting Quest Rogue. I've talked about my love-hate relationship with playing Quest Rogue and running into Quest Rogue on ladder, but from a casting perspective, I think it is responsible for a lot of the most interesting matchups from my perspective. But we're not going to be seeing that here because it is banned on both sides. But we do have essentially a completely mirrored lineup between the two, so there's no real surprise to see mirrored bans coming out as well.
Right, yeah, normally once you build a lineup, your strategy is fairly clear, especially when your opponent has the same set of decks. I'm excited now to see, because I'm not trying to say before anyone jumps on me that pick order is going to be super important.
Careful.
But the order in which the decks are queued are going to be very interesting, because it's either going to lead to direct mirror matches, like we said, or it's not, basically. So the mirror matches, once you get a win in that mirror match, it makes things just look a little bit weird in terms of, okay, this deck beats this deck beats that.
Yeah, it's also worth noting, sometimes when you have a completely mirrored lineup, there is a little bit of plus EV somewhere by deviating from your normal ban. Because the ban is so predictable from your opponent, you can actually potentially gain some percentage. But that very much depends on the specific 4 decks you have in a mirror match like that. I think this time around, Quest Rogue just such a powerful deck. You know, the king or the queen of the anti-control strategy, if you want to look at it that way. No surprise to see it going down.
Okay, well, let's get into game number 1, LionKing versus Roger. And now maybe LionKing's feeling a bit more pressure, because we've been talking a lot about how powerful China has been looking in this tournament, but we've just seen Saimiao fall to Ike. So now LionKing wants to continue trying to join some of the other players. Yu Ying is the big example there of being in already that top cut.
Yep, and you mentioned that it's really going to be a little bit of a spicy queue order here, but it's going to be the Hunter Mirror first up. So no player really gaining an edge in terms of the matchup that comes out. I'm just looking at the potential differences in the 2 decks, see if anyone can find an edge that way. LionKing is playing a single Nerubian Unraveler, whereas Roger is packing 2 of them. You think that card is an advantage in the mirror match or a disadvantage?
I think a lot of the time it just has more specific uses. If you drop it on curve, it stops like cube play dead, for example. It can stop the early turns like that can happen, and can kind of create a runaway train scenario in the mirror match. But what's a little bit more interesting to me is the Amani Warbear card being used for LionKing, whereas Roger has 2 charged Devil Saws and LionKing has none. So they have a very different interaction in terms of how they use these beasts.
Yeah, and also LionKing, you see there the Stitch Tracker coming up in his tracking. He's only playing a single copy of it, as well as a Spellbreaker, whereas Roger is playing 2 copies of Stitch Tracker. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure who comes out ahead on that. Like, on the surface, you might want to say, well, obviously Spellbreaker's great, right? Like, you silence cubes and you silence eggs, and it's amazing. But Stitch Tracker is just a really great tool in a matchup like this to make sure that you're finding your cubes, your Terrascale Stalkers, the minions that you need more consistently than your opponent does.
Yeah, and it's also very respective of how the Spellbreaker is used. If you Spellbreaker on 4 an egg that was played on 3, well,
kiss his fingertips.
Exactly, fantastic. If you Spellbreaker a cube, well, the cube kills the Spellbreaker and is still alive. And what else are you doing with that mana? Because Death Rattle Hunter's average turn is actually very expensive.
And if you want to extrapolate that out to the actual worst-case scenario, if you Spellbreaker a cube that's already had a Play Dead cast on it in the same turn as well, right? Like, what is that doing?
Yeah. Weird things. We see Roger definitely getting the better end of the stick in terms of the early game, the Devil Saw eggs just there, coming thick and fast, along with that Terrascale Stalker to be able to actually activate them. And also, most importantly, the Houndmaster Shore is just often kind of unanswerable by the Death Rattle Hunter on the other side of the board.
And there is no Spellbreaker in hand for LionKing to be able to boil that egg and serve it for breakfast, so he's going to have to deal with it the hard way.
I would really like to see Devil Saw. Yeah, here we go. Use the coin, use the Play Dead now, because now you are the minion ahead. You get initiative on the attack, as opposed to Roger, who, okay, say Roger can make 5/5s, but they don't attack this turn, and then LionKing will want to just stay always 1 step ahead. Also, I will say as well that the very general rules of Hunter mirrors, regardless of archetype, still apply. Because you can put enough pressure on the life total to actually ignore anything your opponent does for the rest of the game, because Hunter's normally very bad at coming back from behind. Once you pass that sort of point of no return, you can just go face and kind of ignore it, because you know that, say GoeLionKing starts playing very aggressive, he will know that Roger has to do miracles to be able to actually, one, catch up on life total, whilst also not dying.
This was a big decision point for Roger on the previous turn, as you were talking there. The decision between Houndmaster Shaw and the Terrascale Stalker were the two most likely plays. Houndmaster Shaw is still, or would have still been uncontested on the board, but it's something as simple as a candle shot, and then you move forward to flanking strike and various other options that would have taken care of it. And if he did go Houndmaster Shaw and one of those things came down, he would have been in a great deal of trouble. But the problem with the play that he just made is, firstly, it was mana efficient, which now gives him some issues moving forward as well. But secondly, it gave GoeLionKing just so much freedom in terms of dictating trades, right? Roger just basically mirrored the turn, but a turn behind, which means GoeLionKing, if he felt like it, can trade 5/5s. That's his option. If he wanted to take the value trade into the 3/3, that's fine too. If he wanted to go face, that's great as well. Like, all the options were on GoeLionKing's side because Roger didn't really present him a problem with his play.
Yeah, and I think that play from Roger was made based on the power spike over time of a card, right? So
the PSOT.
Exactly, yeah, I'm glad you've heard of this. It was published in my paper a few weeks ago, so I'm glad you've read it. But it's mainly just about Terrascale Stalker on curve, I'll say, is very powerful, as the 3/3 is good early game a lot of the time. Houndmaster Shaw on any given turn can be extremely powerful. On curve, difficult to kill, has good follow-up turns. Late game, you can do stuff and rush minions on the same turn you play Houndmaster Shaw. So the power spike is way more consistent throughout the whole game, whereas Terrascale Stalker actually just falls off a little bit.
Does it?
I feel like it does.
I feel like Terrascale Stalker is a fantastic card in the late game when you have enough mana that it can combine with cubes. I think that's perhaps when it's at its most powerful.
I just feel that is not as powerful as the follow-up from an egg, and especially, say, a coined egg, but also that's asking a lot of multiple cards, something good 2-cube, and then Terrascale Stalker, and even that you're paying 3 mana for a 3/3 that in this matchup gets crushed by every other minion in the game at that point.
I mean, as it is, Roger drew Playdead to perfectly curve out on 5 with Houndmaster Shaw Playdead, and he ended up looking like a genius. But I feel like he left himself in a position with his play where no matter what, he was going to need a lot of help on the following turn. As it stands, he found it.
Witchwood Grizzly coming down at a very reasonable 8 health. Yes, it is dead on board, but it does do some damage to Houndmaster Shaw, open it up to a potential flanking strike. But the worry is what Houndmaster Shaw does. Roger does not have to trade Houndmaster to be able to kill this Grizzly. He has all the options in the world right now, and we're about to see one of the very, very powerful ones.
Back-to-back Playdeads off the top for Roger.
And there's still his own Grizzly he can play, which will also be 8 health, so can easily pick off
the
this
Defender of
5/2.
Argus is insane here as well.
That's what I mean. Like the options are so insane because Houndmaster Shaw's on the board.
My shield for Argus.
Like, just look at how this affects the breakpoint. You get an extra 2/3 in play that you can do with what you please.
Quickly.
I'll be surprised if he uses Houndmaster Shaw here. Okay, I'm surprised.
I think this is fine.
It just always worries me putting a Houndmaster on 3. I guess the idea is, look, if he flanking strikes that, he's not flanking strike the other dinosaurs, which is fantastic, of course.
Unity. Precision.
I want to live.
Perfection.
As it is, Houndmaster Shaw is going to live for Roger for yet another turn. And it's going from bad to worse for GoeLionKing.
Yeah, Yeah, I think potentially that turn Roger had a reasonable read on a lack of flanking strike, and what he was thinking about when he was making trades with Deathstalker Rexar, he really wanted to manipulate what was at 2 health as opposed to what was at 3. As you see, he left himself with a 6-3 on board that, you know, if Deathstalker Rexar came down, the Shaw would live and the 6-3 would live, which was the most punishing thing he could do against Deathstalker Rexar. As it stands, that left him with a little bit of a weakness to Ziliax, then coming down and rushing into the 6-3 taunt, but still not really good enough.
The flanking strike could have gone on the Shaw that turn at the expense of damage, and it does interest me that the choice... Maybe I'm too scared of how Master Shaw, but I feel like Shaw has potentially just won Roger this game.
Yeah.
And so I think I would have took the 2 extra damage and left it and played the Spider Bomb and just said, right, no more shenanigans. We're just going to play a fair game from this point, and maybe he gets to hold on because he does have Katharina, he does have a Mani Warbear.
I think the problem in that world is that he takes so much damage immediately that he then dies to just 2 hero powers from that point. And then, like, how does he get out? He would have needed to immediately draw Deathstalker Rexar, which he ends up doing. I feel like this is a great illustration of Hearthstone because, like, I'm making a lot of points that are based on, you know, average outcomes, which is kind of what you think about, right? Like, what are the odds of this happening? What's the probability of this happening? And then just because the perfect card then comes off the top that changes your thinking in a one-off instance, that shouldn't affect your long-term thought process as a Hearthstone player, right? But it's so dangerous. It's so easy to fall into the trap of, I made this play, and then I drew the right card and I won, therefore the play was right. But that's just kind of fallacious thinking.
It is. But I'm going to send you something else to stew on.
Go on.
Sometimes you have to play like you're going to draw the best card in the deck.
That is true. That is true.
Sometimes you need to play as if you're drawing Rexar soon.
You are not wrong. Sometimes your situation is so miserable where essentially you just invent yourself a win condition, which can involve just drawing whatever number of perfect cards that you want, as long as you put them in your deck. Like, let's not get too realistic.
They just magically appear in the deck. You're like, I knew I was going to draw this Mind Blasters Hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just feel like, regardless of which way you look at it, this Shaw was a longer-term threat. If the game continues, the Shaw's the threat for me, not just a 5-2.
Yeah.
What's even coming out? Charge Devil Saw.
That'll do, Pig.
Looks good to me, and Roger takes a extremely comfortable game 1. But I will say that the Death Rattle Hunter mirror is very much decided by who and if anyone can get a powerful opening, because the comeback mechanisms in that deck are few and far between.
Yeah, even then, you know, we spent a lot of time during that game kind of disagreeing on lines of play, both with each other and potentially with the players as well. So who knows how much scope there was to affect the outcome of that game, based on a few different decisions. Yeah. But in the timeline in which we currently reside, Roger is leading with a 1-0 victory, having picked up a win in the Hunter Mirror. And it's one of those really dumb-sounding statements, but when you're playing a mirrored lineup and then you queue a mirror match first things first, each win is just worth its weight in gold.
It is. That is exactly true. So Roger taking the lead 1-0 in this mirror match incomplete. We're going to see if he can continue this victory and going to take the whole series or not. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back.
风格还是没有什么太大变化的，并没有速度上的太大的转变。我用的卡组仍然还是一些偏慢速的卡组，比如类似于 Definition 的那种控制类型的卡组，是比较我能针对得到的卡组。这次我带的卡组在环境中还是比较普遍的几套卡组。我觉得有一套卡组特别强，叫做元素萨。但是因为刚出来几天，我也没有来得及练习那套牌，所以也没带。一看可能就是牧师吧，其他的我感觉都还不错。我想要把牧师换成那套元素萨，这套牧师是比较合适于打控制套牌，但是这次的环境控制套牌比较少，那么这套牧师在打项武跟我自己同样的拉 up 的时候也不具备特别大的优势，但是然后同时打快攻也不是特别的好打，所以呢，我比较想换成就是 环境中更合适的元素萨，比如任务贼中带了一张闷棍。之前是很少有人带闷棍的，不过我们这个小组的人都想到了这一点，但是其他小组的任务贼并没有想到这一点。这个巧合，我觉着，还比较 interesting。最难取胜的就是邦内 Hopper 和类似于邦内 Hopper 的快攻 line-up， 所以我觉得我如果战胜邦内 Hopper， 进入4强以及夺得冠军都是非常容易的。
大家好，我是罗杰，然后我来自亚太区，在玩一些类似游戏王的纸牌游戏，然后后来接触之后，我发现自己玩的不错，然后就一直慢慢玩，时间久而久之就到现在这样了。对，也没有说特别什么。其实我一开始玩炉石是因为那个朋友介绍，然后我小时候其实对我自己来说，我觉得跟朋友一起玩炉石这件事情是很重要。然后因为我们可以互相讨论，然后我们也可以互相进步，每次的比赛就可以一起作战，我觉得这也是可以一直往下走的很大的关键。我想就是因为我这个比赛其实就是不光我自己准备，还有我一些朋友，我希望因为他们也有一起努力过这个比赛，然后我希望我可以把他们的那份也一起努力起来。就是其实有那么多人支持我玩游戏的风格，我觉得是不会，就知道自己有那么多人支持我，然后我会更加努力，然后更希望能发挥好自己的实力，然后拿到好成绩。我觉得就是也没有说想要借由这个比赛来证明自己，因为我觉得就算赢或者是输，就是也没有办法就让大家有别的就是其他的改变，但我觉得。就是我希望我能发挥我最好的实力，然后这样我觉得就已经很足够了。
Continuing Roger versus GoeLionKing here, and just a note, I've been talking a lot about how varied the lineups, how varied the deck choice is, and then even the tech cards are in this tournament. Could find out that it could have been even more so, as GoeLionKing was considering bringing Elemental Shaman, a deck that we've not really seen much in the West.
Yeah, it's like the pet deck of China, right? Like they really put a lot of stock in it, and we've seen a lot of it if you've been paying attention to the recent tournaments that have occurred out there. They really do value this Elemental Shaman as a powerful deck, so I was actually a little bit surprised that we didn't see any of the Chinese players then bringing this to the tournament. But the other thing that really stood out to me in GoeLionKing's interview there is he specifically called out one player, Definition, as to who he was looking to aim at with his lineup, saying, I built my lineup to beat players with control decks like Definition. Well, guess who his opponent is to qualify for the World Championship if he can get past Roger? It's Definition.
So I guess Bunny Hopper after all that, but maybe I'm wrong. Yes, it is Definition, but before he does that, he's got to get over this hurdle before I trip over my own words. GoeLionKing is going to be on the Priest, and Saul, it's a mirror match.
Let's go!
So, let's look at the list. So, turn 9 Xerix, turn 9 Xerix. Okay, understand this matchup already.
Literally hate you.
Job's done.
Would you like to, Saul version, explain this matchup?
I'm just checking out the differences between the two decks as we speak, and it looks like both of them are running the very lean minion package, Malagos, Velen, Ziliax, Radiant Elementals. So actually your facetious explanation is as close to reality as it can get with this deck, because building the deck like that does make it the most consistent in terms of just straight up combo strategy, because it means that not only does your Xerix work as an OTK if all of your minions have remained in your deck up until that point, but it also makes your Eternal Servitudes and your Spellstones very consistent at pulling out that same OTK as well.
Right, and looking at the hands here from GoeLionKing, he has managed to get that Elemental down very early on. It is going to hit the Master Spell now from Roger that was Shadow Visions. And I think Shadow Visions, for me, at least in the first, well, up until turn 8, is one of the most interesting cards, right? It's like, do you Shadow Visions a Spellstone to start chugging a Spellstone early on? Do you try and go for more damage? I find it for me, the most difficult part of the deck is what do you even look for if you have Shadow Visions early?
Well, Roger's going to present himself with that question right now. This is the kind of matchup where Vivid Nightmare can really pay dividend, because it can allow you to create massive burst combos just with a single spell, honestly, if you are fortunate enough to get out a Melon. Hey,
Valley Ghost and a melon.
Valley Ghost and Prophet Melon onto the board.
Please, someone make that artwork. I will commission it.
At COL_Soto, I want Prophet Melon immediately. Get on it. Malygos and Prophet Melon. If you manage to get them both onto the board, then Vivid Nightmare can really be lethal with any and all single spells source of damage. Raven is currently crudely sketching Prophet Melon on the back of the deck list.
Do my best. We'll get back to the game, though, and suddenly this Elemental is looking a little bit scary in itself. And how much stock are you putting into early game or pre-combo damage, I'll call it? Is that something that any of these players needs to be very afraid of if this Elemental starts hitting face? How likely is, oh, burst dead, going to come out?
Well, so there's a few breakpoints. There's 14, there's 20, and then there's the one that doesn't really matter in the mirror, which is 34. Right? Those are the ones that you generally have to look for when you're playing against a Vivid Nightmare deck. Those can change. But really, like, chip damage doesn't matter. You need chunk damage, right? You need to, if you can push your opponent down below 20, below 15, then you can start to be really, really threatening and make your opponent do very silly-looking things. You know, perhaps throwing away a res on a Malygos just so they can Spirit Lash themselves back up. You know, like that that kind of panicking sort of play. But until it gets to that point, it's not particularly relevant because both players are very comfortably able to deal 30 to the other.
Okay, thanks. Good job. I understood all of that. Mass Hysteria going to be used just to start chipping away at the health on this Elemental, and also just get the Elemental in the pool for GoeLionKing, because you did notice that there isn't a huge reason to kill off a silenced Radiant Elemental on your opponent's side of the board. So GoeLionKing just getting the job done for himself anyway, and creating some space in his hand as well. Already, even just with damage on board, there is 10 plus 10 from the Mind Blast in hand and 2 from the Holy Smite. So Roger's nearly got lethal in a very strange way.
Roger's kind of set himself up in a little bit of a spot where he played 2 5/5s into his opponent's turn 7 plus coin, which is perhaps something he could have kept an eye on. I understand that just playing the Shadow Essence to get a 5/5 was really like his only real development play there, and actually GoeLionKing decides that he'd rather have those minions back in his opponent's deck rather than dead, which is an interesting decision that's kind of unique to this Xerix Priest matchup, where putting them back in the deck plays into your opponent's Xerix OTK potential, whereas killing them plays into your opponent's having activated cards like Eternal Servitude and Spellstone in hand, which can then bring them back from the dead, but can't bring them back from the deck. So it's a very weird decision as to whether you would rather have a minion in the graveyard or in the deck.
I think I do like the choice overall, mainly because you're also giving them bad draws, because you know, Ziliak's not a good draw in this matchup, is it? Right? Yep. You don't really want to draw it and then be like, oh, okay, I'll just play and hope. And also, you know, the same can be said to a certain extent of Radiant Elemental. Is you don't. It's one of the lower impact draws you can get. You can't just do it like where you can drop a Velen on board and it's like, well, now you need to deal with it one way or the other. But I do like just putting them back in the deck. There's some extras, so now there's 2 Ziliaks and an extra Radiant in there.
Yep.
I think that's completely fine.
GoeLionKing decides it's time to just drop his Malygos, and this is really what he has to be doing. He does have his Xerix, but having already drawn the Mali, his potential for OTK in the short term is extremely limited, so he has to set up a medium-term burst combo, which involves getting those minions dead so he can resurrect them and then pair them with the Xerix Cloning Gallery or a Velen Resurrection as well. Actually, with the
just lethal
22 and 4 from the Holy Smite,
I was gonna say, we were intently looking at GoeLionking's hand and just working out, okay, he's got the Malygos, he's got the plan, he's got the plays, what's going on? Oh, like we said earlier, Roger kind of just nearly had lethal. It turned out some of that early push damage in this specific scenario was enough with the Radiant Elemental just for the final little bump there, and Roger quite swiftly, and I'm genuinely surprised takes game number 2 in that second mirror match of the series.
Yeah, it did catch me by surprise. It was kind of a unique situation. Normally, you know, turn 9 drawing a Prophet Velen, Lethal isn't in the forefront of my mind, but it was only the fact that the Radiant Elemental was alive on board, you know, discounting those 3 spells that made it end up all be castable for the necessary damage that was needed. So Roger, in what looked like it could be a very close back and forth series with a lot of long games between these kind of late game focused combo decks that they're playing, has gone out to an incredibly rapid 2-0 lead.
It is, and you know, back and forth I think is right up until that point. Looking at LionKing's state, he had the Malygos down and there was no actual way for Roger to deal with it.
Right.
And he had Vivid Nightmares, his own Mind Blast, I think a Holy Smite, and a Powered Shield, plus the draw from the next turn. So it was just as likely to a certain extent that maybe LionKing does the kill turn next turn somehow. So it was it's definitely a match that bounces on a knife's edge, I would say, in terms of how quickly that lethal can come. But Roger, yeah, just leading 2-0 and only one more matchup to go. So I guess they're queuing their Warlocks now. Is the way we're going, right?
That's the pattern we've had so far. Roger has no choice but to queue that Warlock. And LionKing so far has matched him step for step in terms of running the mirror matches. So we'll see what he fancies. Of course, it is everything is in his court here, and if he wants to just get back in the comfort zone, he does have the ability to just play a couple of nice favored matchups first if he wants to, but nope, mirror matches all the way down.
Okay, I already like this series overall because it is just a beautiful thing. It's just mirrored decks, mirrored lineups, and even just going toe-to-toe, class to class going on now, as we do have the Warlock mirror.
Symmetry is a wonderfully satisfying thing.
Curse into our strength.
Differences in the decks here: 0 Doomsayers in LionKing's deck, a single Doomsayer and a single Gastropod in Roger's deck, which equips him much better for this early game exchange between the Mountain Giants and who tries to consolidate their Mountain Giant first. In terms of the 6-drop Disruption cards, 2 Nerubian Unravelers on Roger's side, and a single Nerubian Unraveler and a Mojo Master Zihi on LionKing's side.
And a Black Knight.
I guess that's a disruption card, yeah, sure.
He's pretty good in this matchup.
Yeah,
It's something that Roger's going to have to
is.
consider. You can't just taunt up a big boy and hope it's going to get the work done. I will say, though, the biggest difference in the decks and in the hands is that coin, because it means that Roger gets the giant down first.
Right, but I want to be very careful with this. You know, the coin RNG, who gets it, is not something that you can control. And having the coin in the even lock matchup and being able to play a Mountain Giant first is a huge benefit. But that's not to say that you have no agency in that decision. You do. You can put Doomsayers and Stubborn Gastropods in your deck so that if you end up going first in the even lock mirror, you can create situations where you still get the first giant. LionKing did not do that. That is a deck building decision. That is not just, oh, I went first, so I lose.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, you can also defend your aggressive giant opening like Roger has with a Stubborn Gastropod, and that was a very low-powered Spellstone. Not necessarily what it enabled. It enabled the giants to trade, which is very good for LionKing, but it was a 3 damage, 3 heal Spellstone to kill a 1-2.
Sorry, can I just add, yikes, currently? Like, this is just savagery. Dead to Spellbreaker. Dead to Hellfire.
I was going to say, and that's just going to be it. We blinked and almost missed it.
We just get the day off, Raven.
I know, yeah. Luckily for us, today's a day when we get to cast 3, so we are going to be back a little bit later on. But Roger versus LionKing, all I'll say is, if you just tuned in, it's a very quick VOD to catch up on because those games were lightning.
Roger just threw LionKing off a cliff into a herd of stampeding buffalo. That is what just happened this series.
Shark riding, stampeding buffalo, I think, to that extent. It was insane, but you see just how aggressive the play was and how quickly those games have ended, but very much a display of when the decks fight each other. It's what those decks want to do, right? You want to land Mountain Giants, you want to get the combos, the high damage combos out with the Priest,
yeah.
And then the Death Rattle Hunter, you want to snowball big beasts. Like pretty much just a display of the deck. It's just one player just did that little bit faster than the other.
Yeah, and I think in the first two games, the differences in the lineups didn't really come into play. There were big tech decisions difference in the Death Rattle Hunter, but they kind of both just drew the same part of their deck, roughly. And it was the Howlmaster Shore tempo that really took over. Same in the Cloning Gallery Priest, it was just kind of raced to the OTK with a very similar deck. But then in that last game, very, very clear what Doomsayers and Stubborn Gastropods do in the even lock mirror, and they just were not there for LionKing, and he got punished for it.
100% agree. We can look at how Group D has shaken out. Bunny Hopper, of course, the group winner with a very crazy last series versus Roger, but then Roger had to fight back in the decider match versus LionKing to get that runner-up spot and continue with his life in the tournament.
Yeah, and worth noting, of course, LionKing called out that he would love to play against Definition because that's what his lineup is built to be. Well, guess what? They have the same lineup, which means Roger is in a fantastic spot going up against Definition as well.
It really does. I believe Roger is ready for a few words, so we'll go over to the play side.
Thank you very much, Raven Saw. Congrats, Roger. You go through to the top 8. That was very quick and one-sided. Did you expect it to go that quickly and that smoothly?
首先恭喜你进到8强。那请问，刚刚这么快的比赛，你有预期到这种结果吗？
我觉得因为其实我刚刚的牌组就是师傅牌一共120张嘛，那我们大概110几张牌都一样。我觉得，然后小王爷他也是那个想干脆就直接跟我打内战，然后我觉得运气稍微好一点，对结束的比较快。
So basically, our lineups are pretty similar. Actually, there are only like 10 or some cards are different. And LionKing also wants to play mirror games with him. So we both expect there will be the match like this.
Yeah, gotcha. It makes sense. The next opponent that you have is Definition, and a lot of people are saying that this looks just like a free win for you in the top 8. Do you feel that confidence as well, that going up against Definition is really good for you?
那你下一场对到的对手是 Definition， 那基本上这对你来说是一个必赢的对局。那你有什么对这个对局有什么想法？
我觉得，因为我还没有很清楚看他的牌，不过我觉得，因为我觉得那个德云学也很强嘛，然后他前面也有赢那个菜苗，就是菜苗打他的那个对局也是蛮有优势。我待会可能再稍微研究一下，然后我会好好想办法加油。
So I haven't go through the lineups of the Definitions, and I saw the match with of Definition and Saimiao, and Saimiao actually had advantage to Definition. So I will go through the lineups in detail and see how it will work.
All right. My last question is, I heard you got a little bit of advice from some of the other players from Taiwan going into the event and the match. What did they say, and who was the one that was telling you, and what did they say?
我听说你有跟一些台湾的选手练习，或者是问他们一些建议。那实际上你有跟谁讨论过一些战术？
其实因为那个他们最近比较常在玩自走棋，不过他们还是有给我一些心理上的建议。然后练习的话，我可能有跟学习，然后还有 CMO 操，然后稍微练习。他们大家都蛮希望我去赢这次比赛的。
And I had discussion with Tom, and also I practiced with Jaxi and Samuel Cao, and they gave me a lot of advices.
All right. Well, congratulations, Roger. Good luck into the top 8. And with that, let's head over back to Raven and Sottle for further analysis.
Thanks a lot, Dan, and very sort of quick words with Roger there. But when you practice and your advice crew is that selection of players, Tom, Samuel Zhao, these are very experienced players by now. So pretty good position to enter a tournament in, I think.
Yeah, and it's showing. He's really crushing his way through this bracket so far, and it's a decent place to be in the lower bracket through the mid portion of this tournament, because what we saw early on was the aggro decks cannibalizing these kind of lineups that we saw here in this matchup, and so the aggro sent all the anti-control down to the lower side of the bracket, which meant all the aggro and the anti-control were then separated for this mid portion of the tournament. What then the anti-control lineup needs going into the World Championship qualifying match is exactly what he's ended up with, is a match against Definition.
Yeah, well, there's still a lot of matches to play out today, but this one specifically was was just a blitz. Roger versus LionKing. After a little bit of a slow start, I'll say slow air quotes there with this Hunter mirror, it then sped up to 2 extremely quick wins from Roger as this series just got out of control. So he's going to be moving on, and LionKing is going home. But stay tuned, we've got an update on the top 8 very, very soon. So we'll be right back.